Hi everyone, my name's Anthony Cummins and I'm a historical researcher and author. Now I am interested in bringing about the truth about samurai and shinobi warfare and skills. Now, throughout my journey since I was a young child, I've made almost every mistake possible when it comes to actually understanding the samurai. I've gone down nearly every wrong avenue, and I've made this video so that we, or you, can benefit from my mistakes and we can all understand a bit deeper the world of the samurai and the shinobi. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the major mistakes, or the 5 major mistakes that a lot of people make, again myself included, and I'm going to go into detail about this, so it may take quite some time, but at the end I'm going to give a quick roundup and say exactly what you should do and how to avoid these mistakes. Okay, samurai arts taught today are battlefield art. Now, a lot of Westerners come at, and see old schools and Koryu and martial arts schools, and they think, that's what the samurai did on a battlefield. This is how they used to fight on the battlefield. Now, it's a very, very easy conclusion to jump to, is that somebody's wearing a hakama, they're wearing, a gi top, they've got a samurai sword, they've got a spear. You're like, must be a battlefield art, must be. However, this is an easy mistake to jump to. Now, most of what you actually see is street fighting. The reason for this is, on a battlefield, you have, first of all, you set up in formation. There are other troops like ashigaru shooting. There are even different phases of battles throughout history. So, for example, in early samurai times, it was a much more freer horse-based archery battle. Then, as time goes on, the battlefield gets much more compact. You get assistants to you, so you have people who assist you, and also you have troop formations, pikemen, phalanxes, all sorts of stuff. It's basically not what you would consider, as we see in these kata where people are using swords. It is totally different. It's like usually multiple men, groups, assistants, things like that. So most of what you see, not all of it, but most of it, what you see today in samurai dojos or Koryu dojos is actually street fighting, with some of it obviously just still works on a battlefield when everything's gone higgledy-piggledy and everybody's all over. Slashing the sword will always kill someone, but you've got to remember that 2 people coming together, drawing a sword or attacking is generally not normally a battlefield. It's about street fighting in the Edo period, or even before, but basically street fighting. Now, you've got to see that lots of kata are based on one-on-one. Now, one-on-one fighting was quite actually rare in battle, even when you're at the major point, which is called, or the first point, which is called Ichiban Yari, the first spear. It's still okay to be assisted in the first spear. So the idea of seeing kata come together one-on-one, on the whole, is deemed with dueling and street fighting. And of course, even in dueling and street fighting, you get multiple opponents. And even in battle you get one-on-one, but on the whole you're looking at single combat between 2 people as opposed to multiple combat between many. So remember, sometimes what you are using may work on a battlefield, may not, but lots of the strikes are aimed at armoured places. You have to absolutely distinguish between something that is going for an armoured person against a group of other men when you're in a group of men, versus an unarmoured fight with someone in a field through a grudge match, or you get revenge attacks. This is where somebody's had a slight, or there's an honour has been brought into question, then or somebody's killed somebody's parent, or it's a blood feud and they set out on a mission of vengeance with the aim of fighting them wherever they fight them in the end. And that's mostly, or not all of it, but lots of kata is based on that type of thing. Street fighting in the streets of Japan during the medieval period, or dueling or revenge. So make sure you know which one is which. Make sure you know this is for battle, this is for street fighting. Kata is symbolic. This is really, really quite difficult because this doesn't have a definite line. You can get kata that is symbolic but almost realistic, and then you can get right at this end where kata is almost nothing like it would be in reality, and it's highly, highly symbolic and abstract. So remember, kata is not actual fighting. That is not how people fought. fighting is much dirtier, much more gruesome, much more realistic, much more fluid, much more aggressive. Therefore, it doesn't kata doesn't represent real combat. It is a symbolic image, it is an abstract concept of what is a reality in fighting. They have taken the reality, they have made it abstract, and they have showed through symbol and dance, if you want to, through artistic means, they've showed what should happen inside of that very brutal, very fast reality. You've got to remember that kata is symbolic. It is symbolic and it's a messenger. It carries a teaching through time. So where one person was an excellent fighter, really rough, scarred up guy, maybe a couple of teeth missing, and he was excellent, he turned that into a formalized version, and it was a little message that he passes along time, and it becomes more and more formulaic as it goes along. And the idea of kata is for you to withdraw from it what actually happens in a fight, take from the abstract and make it real. Now, this is only my personal opinion, but I think kata was not meant to be passed down in the form it's passed down. I think kata evolved into the form that it is in today. I personally think kata was much more fluid, much more realistic, and even though it was still a symbolic representation of combat, I think it was at this end. Let's pretend this end is closer to actual warfare, and then as the Edo period in time goes on, it becomes more and more abstract, more and more abstract, more and more symbolic, till it gets to this side, and it's a case of we're here now. Some schools are very much closer to here, some schools are very much over here. You've even got other schools that have got beyond that and gone into dance formation, where they actually have line dances based on kata. So they've gone right from here to here and beyond. So remember that when you look at a school, when you want to investigate samurai warfare or a Koryu school, think, is their kata look realistic in fighting, or are we way over this end? The importance of the cult of the house. What do I mean by cult of the house? Remember, a samurai is from a family. He is not an individual. A samurai is absolutely part of a family network, and that family are either the top family, or they serve another family. The cult of the house is such a misunderstood, such a misrepresented and forgotten about aspect, that the samurai is not something you look at as a solid form. He is from such a house. Now, a house can be divided into the main line that goes down, and the branches that come off it. And sometimes branches that come off produce their own main lines, a new line of that. So the first son in a samurai household carries on the main branch. Other sons carry on sub-branches, and if they break away, they can, or if one of them gets employment somewhere else, they start their own main branch again. It's all to do with basically employment from a lord, and status and fief and everything that's given to you, and the main branch there. So people do break off, but on the whole you have to remember there's a main branch and a sub-branch. Now, fundamentally, one of the mistakes that people make is they believe that the school, a Koryu, a school, is important for a samurai. They believe that samurai give loyalty to the school. It's totally incorrect. Samurai loyalty is given to the house. The school serves the house. An area normally which is ruled by a bigger house. So for example, let's call it Natoryu. That used to serve, Natoryu is a school, and it serves the house of Tokugawa. Yeah, Kishu Tokugawa, it serves the Tokugawa house. The house is what was important, not the school. While the school has tradition and lineage and importance, it is not the important thing for a samurai. A samurai doesn't wake up and think, how can I serve my school? A samurai wakes up and says, how can I serve the house? So let me give you some examples. You've got the house of Tokugawa. This is the Tokugawa family, probably considered the major house or most powerful house in all of Japanese history. Debatable, but probably. Then of course you got the house of Toyotomi. These are Hideyoshi's people. Now he pretty much took over Japan, so the house of Toyotomi became the #1 house. But then let's go down the ladder, like for example, people who serve Toyotomi is the House of Fukushima. Now this is Fukushima, so Toyotomi's here, Fukushima serve Toyotomi. Now under that, Nojiri, the House of Nojiri, serve Fukushima. So at the top you've got House of Toyotomi, House of Fukushima, House of Nojiri, and there's lots of these little sort of webs that come off, and that is the importance. Now inside of that, people will train in schools, but above everything is that your sort of loyalty to the house. Maybe it's not always loyal, but we'll get into that in a minute. Another example is Tokugawa, like for example Kishu Tokugawa, and then you get sort of like the House of Natori. They served the Kishu Tokugawa house. Now that school, Natori-ryu, actually used to teach samurai from all over the district of Kishu, Wakayama. Now they of course all serve, at the time it was Tokugawa Yorinobu, they served him, and the Natori trained the samurai to be good at warfare for the Tokugawa house, Kishu Tokugawa. So remember, a house can be the size of a state, or it can simply be a father and son, a very, very small element. But the point is that the house exists. The house may be a couple of family members. It could be 10s, 20, 30 members of a family, all served with, all who are rich and own land, who have samurai serving them. This is feudal system. The house is important, not the school. To take this one step further, technically, all samurai serve the emperor. Every samurai in Japan serves the emperor. Technically, of course, that was never a reality. That was the idea. Samurai is to serve, and it's to serve the emperor. So each house is to serve the emperor. Of course, they all disagreed on what was the best service to the emperor, and they all fought with each other, and they all sort of like took power. And the reality was, the shogun was established. You get three basic measurements of power in Japan. You get the emperor, you get the regent, and then you get the shogun, and they're totally separate. You got the emperor, the regent rules for the emperor, the shogun is the military dictator basically. So you've got everyone who's serving the emperor on paper, but in reality they serve themselves, or the main house at the top. Again, this is my opinion, but I think now you've got to remember that Koryu, or schools basically, Ryuha, they only started around the middle of the samurai period. So you're getting sort of like 13, 14, 1500s. They only just start to come in, and they flourish in the Edo period. Lots of them come in there. Now this is my theory, guys, not historical research. It's just my gut feeling and my idea from what I've done so far. Is as you go back in time, the family and the school are not separated. The family run their martial arts, and that family keep their martial arts within themselves. And of course there may, be branch families and other bits come in. But I think on the whole, later in samurai times, the family and the school divided, so house and school divided. Originally, I think the main person of the family would teach their sons, their nephews warfare, and then they would continue on. Now this, I think it's quite an obvious point, because this did happen, especially in like shinobi families. You keep it within the family, you pass it on to these people, and other people kept it within the family. But later on, as schools developed, and it's a massive conversation, it could go on for a long time in different avenues, but the point being here is that loyalty to the house and loyalty to the school was once not divided, because they were the same thing, or as close to the same thing as we can get. Then later there becomes a divide where the skills are taught by one person and the actual house is somewhere else. It's in the same area, but in your mind the house is there and the school is taught by someone else, and people from many houses go to one school. That's a debate for another day, so I'll leave that there. Now, of course, samurai promise not to give away, they give loyalty to a school, i.e. they will not give away its secrets, they will not do this, they will not, if they break such and such a promise, they will, the gods will punish them. But that's not where their loyalty lies. If your lord, as a samurai, says, I want him killing, you as a samurai, even though that might be your friend, it might even be your school master, it could be anyone inside the school, you have to murder them. This isn't a part of samurai life. Some samurai, in a lot of samurai documents, it says criminal capture. Now, criminal doesn't literally mean the street thief. They just butcher them in the street. The criminal, half the time, is a retainer gone rogue. Now, gone rogue could mean the lord just simply wants him dead. It could be that he's done something wrong. The point is that you serve the house, not the school. Even your closest friends are all in service. It's a feudal system to the Lord. What the Lord says goes. If he says such and such a body dies, it doesn't matter if it's of your school or not, he dies. So remember, this shows you that the house is above the school in all cases. So what is the function of the school? The function of the school is to train the samurai so that they can make results for the house. A samurai needs to have military skills. The schools were developed to develop and pass on military skills, and these schools served houses. Some of them went all over, like Katori Shintoru is all over the place. Sekiguchi Ryu actually moves around. Now, of course, they serve different houses, but these are different branches of schools. So keep in your mind, the house is at the top and it has lots of branches. School is here and it has lots of branches. Some branches serve different houses, but a samurai pretty much serves one house. So remember this, the enemy of a samurai is a samurai. So all samurai pretty much follow the emperor. Now there's debates about which emperor is which, and the northern southern court debate, and is the true emperor on the throne and all that. And of course that political story comes into it. But the key here is that espionage, conspiracy, battle, overthrowing other people, these are all done to gain land, to increase the power of the house. But underlying all this is this sort of like abstract idea, or this floating idea that we do it to serve the emperor, or we do it for the greater good. And of course it's not always that complicated. In medieval society, you just kill the neighbour because you can and take their land, and they were just weak and they should have got on with it. Don't forget that. So what you have to remember here is that samurai fight samurai. So it's house v house. The schoolmaster is not always a superior. So for example, the shogun used to learn, say, one of the later shoguns learned Sekiguchi Ryu. Tokugawa Ieyasu, he was studying under Yagyu. But what you've got to remember is the student is not always inferior to the teacher. The teacher literally has the position of having more knowledge. The student can be socially higher. So don't think, nowadays in Koryu and when we go into dojos, we think, the teacher is the senior and we go down the hierarchy, the pecking order. This did not happen in old times. The teacher of the school was not always socially superior. He could be socially inferior to the student. And of course, this brought in complicated etiquette rituals. But at the end of the day, social position and school, they're not combined. Whereas today, when we go into a dojo, we see everyone now in the Western world, and in the modern world, I should say, as socially equal. So in a school, we see the hierarchy still there. Now this is a shadow and an echo from older times, but remember, as a student of samurai ways, technically, the feudal system, you were higher for a social reason, not because of the school you were in. So remember that at the dojo. Remember that this hierarchy is just an echo and maybe a little bit of a misguided interpretation on trying to, represent samurai life. Of course, there was master class levels in the school, master of a school, and you got the student ranking. That does not make them socially superior. Remember that. You've got to get that in your head. Social superiority has nothing to do with school positioning. Of course, a teacher will get respect, but socially, a 5-year-old child may be higher ranking than the most awesome war master or the most awesome shinobi. A child probably comes above them simply because of bloodline or adoptive line. Now, nowadays, many people think they should only follow one school. You're in one school, that's it, and you owe allegiance to that school. This was not true in historical times. In historical times, you could learn a school of swimming. So you'd go and learn swimming arts, like swimming in armour. But that wouldn't make you a better fighter on a battlefield. So they'd also join a school of kenjutsu, like swordsmanship. Then they may join a school of horse riding. The problem probably came when you join 2 kenjutsu schools. That's probably not so good, or probably wasn't deemed as great. But actually joining a horsemanship school, then joining a sword school, and then joining a spearsmanship school, or a school that does spear, horse, and archery. So basically you fulfill your samurai needs by joining many schools. Now I think this is a big problem, because modern people or modern enthusiasts only join one school. And it's like, we are dedicated to one school, but they don't actually get any teaching in other areas. A samurai samurai would not think, oh, I won't get teaching in horsemanship because my school doesn't do it. They would go and join, as long as these styles didn't conflict or the areas didn't conflict. You don't join so many sword schools. You would definitely learn across the board. You go to one school for your military training in like tactics. You go to another school totally for fire arrows or archery or riding from horseback and shooting from horseback. You could totally go to different schools. You had to make a promise, and what you don't realize is there's actually a tradition in Japan, and it's old school, and there's an idea that a master is someone you accept them as superior to you in teaching, and you promise to be with them till you've learned their sort of skills. But you can leave. You can absolutely leave. Some schools say you must destroy all the scrolls that you've been given, but then you go to another school. There's no we'll kill you if you leave that school. They could actually physically leave that school and find a better school, or they could join multiple schools of different theories. So I think students today of the samurai arts totally stop their what's the word I'm looking for? They totally stop their progression because they think they should only be in one school. This is nonsense. Normally this comes about by masters or modern people want actually more money and stay with me and stay with me, you sign for a school. You can go away and do traditionally you could go and do a few schools. You should realise that some schools served houses, the clan of the house, and some schools did not. So for example, a Ronin may set up his own school, or a samurai may set up his own school, and they teach just generally anyone, They might move to Edo where it's busy, they might get, people might give them some money and they'll make a bit of cash on the side, whereas other schools totally would be for only that house. That house alone is who they served. So be aware of this. Some schools were set up as cash cows to teach, a broad spectrum of social society or samurai society, and other schools were kept very minimum. There's even one school, or some schools, I know one particular in Wakayama, they only served one student, and that was the lord of the province. The school existed to serve only the lord, only he studied it. That type of thing. So you've got to think about this. A school is not a blanket school. You've got totally different reasons for the setup of schools. Now, remember, as a samurai would not consider the political aims of his schoolmaster or the schoolmaster's goals to be the goals he should follow. Absolutely not. The goals he should follow are the goals of his lord or the house directly above him. The goal of the school is to teach the samurai so they can serve the house. Remember that. Of course, there are some Ronin schools that came about and they tried to do rebellious plots and they had political drive. All of that exists, don't get me wrong, it's all there. But on the whole, and this was normally like Ronins or people who've been ousted and things like that, but as a serving samurai, a student of samurai warfare, you should not follow, or you should not try to follow the goals of the school. You totally ignore them goals, they're not for you. The goal of the school is simply just to continue its tradition. The goal a samurai should follow is the goal of the house. The cult of the house is where they are following. So overall, remember that a school is not superior to a house. And recently, or in our time, in modern times, people see the school as the highest form, as the height of hierarchy, as the social leader, the aim and the goal. Everything is based on what the school's grandmaster wants. This was totally not the case in actual samurai times. Samurai and money. Now this is really a subject that nobody ever touches. They never touch it. A samurai does not get paid. They hate cash. They don't like cash. Now of course that's the idealistic state. In reality they probably loved a bit of gold and gambling, but on the whole the ethics of the samurai, Bushido and everything, is not to sustain yourself with coin and cash. The higher up the social ladder you go, the less you touch cash. Okay? Samurai in the warring periods used to become amazing at warfare. The height of being a great samurai was being a great tactician. Below that was being a great fighter on the battlefield. Now if you won wars, you used to either gain land or the people, your superior, if you were a general, your superior would give you land in reward for some great tactics. If you were on the battlefield and you took heads, and you took important heads, you were rewarded with land. They didn't give you a cash fund, oh there's a grand, I enjoy it. They gave you more land. Of course the land brings about food, the food brings about money, but the point is you get people, you get land, you get property, you get labour, you get food. Food and samurai are not separated. Agriculture and samurai go hand in hand. Land is what you wanted. You avoid getting cash. You get land, because land once gotten is inherited. You can inherit it, you can pass it on, and it constantly produces food, and that produces cash. Of course you don't touch the cash, but it produces labour. This brings us on to the cult of the head. The reason that we have a cult of the head in the history of the samurai is that the more prestigious a head, the more land you get. They threw the heads away afterwards. They didn't stroke them and keep them and pet them at night. You know, some people, when you go back to ancient Iron Age England, you get a cult of the head there. This is where they keep the heads and they put them in their doorposts. Now, samurai have the same idea. They have a cult of the head, but they don't keep them. Once the head has been recorded in what's called the Book of Heads, then the samurai is awarded, by the Lord, is awarded a certain amount of land. For example, a Hattori family, Hattori Hanzo family, were awarded an extra 3,000 koku worth of land after such a battle, because, you know, that's what they got for their involvement in that war. So when you deal with the cult of the head, you've got to remember the head represents prestige, prestige represents reward, reward represents land, land represents agriculture, agriculture represents labour, labour represents money, money represents power, power is prestige at the top, all based on cutting somebody's head off because they owned land. In the Sengoku period, it's land grabbing. It's like, there's Japan, let's grab some land, let's grab some land. And for someone to grab land, somebody has to die. So being victorious in the Sengoku period means houses have to fall, entire clans were destroyed, and their property, servants, farmers were given to the victors, right? Remember this. I know this is, I'm harping on a bit, but remember this. It's so important that the soil, the dirt in your hand is what keeps a samurai afloat, and that's what he wants. So this idea that money is not something a samurai should touch actually appears in documentation. This is not something I've made up. It totally appears in documentation. There's the famous one in the book I did, this book. It's called Samurai War Stories, and this was a samurai telling his son off for, dealing with money. So don't touch that, it's disgusting. Get off gold. Your tools are weapons and tactics. So don't bother with that. And I think he throws something gold away to show his son that that's beneath them. Now this actually echoes in modern Koryu, in modern schools that have continued traditionally. Now you never give your money to the Grand Master when you go to give cash. You always give it to an assistant, because it shouldn't be seen as exchanging cash to a Grand Master. When you go in a traditional Japanese dojo, you don't go up and go, there's my fees. Whereas in the West, I used to go to karate and dojo, and you give the sensei, there's my so many pounds, and you pay, they put it in the pot and they tick you off. That didn't happen. You pay someone else because the Grand Master can never hold money, because it's samurai ethics not to be dealing with cash. Of course, on a real basis, the samurai would have a servant with him. They need physical cash, but they try to touch it as little as possible. This still is echoed in schools today when you visit Japan. So this brings me back to a theory I talked about a minute ago, which was were schools established to create cash? Now this is when I think, again this is my opinion, that originally the family, the house and the school were one-on-one together. Then of course it started to divide, and then I think some schools were developed for cash. Now, and I think lots of those family schools died out, and what flourished was the popular schools. Now Miyamoto Musashi himself states this, and I put trust in the Gorin no Sho, the Book of Five Rings. I think it's right. He says it's early 1600s, and he says so many people are not actually practicing real warfare. They're just doing cool things that look nice, and he calls it the fruit and the flower. Now Musashi says the fruit is like physically knifing someone and it works, and the flower is, wow, doesn't it look excellent and beautiful? doesn't do crap on a battlefield, but it looks nice, they're having a nice time. So, but he's saying that they're making a sellable item. He says they are physically selling the skills. Now, what this means is Musashi is like basically saying that a lot of these new schools don't work and people are just making cash out of them. So this is a bit of evidence towards the idea that the family art started to die off or got taught inside of clans because they don't need to be paid. They're already being paid. Remember that a samurai's job is to warfare. So some samurai were teaching the clan their arts because they didn't need to be paid. They already got land. They're being paid from their land constantly. So other people who maybe not being paid so much, or they've become ronin, or they're half samurai, they start up dojos and to get some cash in, or maybe to improve their income, they train and get money from it. It's a big debate, guys, but let's not forget it exists, that some schools are cash cows. And that's not changed even today. The ones you go and it's just cash. So what does it mean? It means that there's a change, there's a massive change from family arts and schools teaching about battlefield tactics and about combat on a battlefield, all the way it shifts to then becoming a sellable art that people pay for. Yeah, so we've got to be careful, and it becomes from a battlefield art, it moves all the way to actually becoming a street fighting art. And what the mistakes I made was I always thought, what's a samurai fight? Wow. And I watched these old videos when I was younger, and I thought, wow, that's how they fought on the battlefield. Of course it's not. They never fought like that on the battlefield at all. That becomes a street fighting element. Samurai are paid from the land they own. We see a move to sellable arts. We see a move to getting cash. Now we see a focus on passing down a tradition and cash. Remember that. From samurai to merchants. Now be careful here. I hope this doesn't upset anyone here, and I don't mean this, but these are just facts, guys. These are just what has happened, and certain facts about human beings you can't actually change. You cannot change the environment you grew up in. You can change yourself, you can try to adjust it, but at the end of the day, I'm English, and my core values are English, and they are not decided by me. They are decided by my environment. And of course, I can then, as an adult, consciously make changes and adjust, but at the end of the day, your early informative years are shaped by your environment around you. So we have to remember that, and we have to remember how this affects how we view the teachers in Japan today. So one of the major mistakes I used to make, and many people still make, and in fact I think it's probably one of the top mistakes people, they view the grandmasters of samurai schools to be samurai. Now of course they logically know that these people are not actually samurai by social status, because samurai stopped, but they sort of see that these grandmasters are the embodiment of what a samurai would be like. They have passed on the samurai traditions, and that they are what you could expect to be a samurai in a time travel concept, i.e. you could take them back in time and they would be samurai. Now I think this is totally erroneous. I think this is absolutely not true, and these are my reasons for it. The samurai were only 6 to 10% of the population. They reckon probably about 6% by the end of the Edo period. So that means about 6% of the people, so that's 6 in 100 people were actually samurai. Now the rest of them were farmers, merchants, and artisans. Now remember that. So just on a basic non-sort of scientific, just through basic logic, that means if you got 100 grandmasters, probably only 6 of them would be descendants of samurai themselves, okay? Now of course that might not be true because you'd have to investigate every single one, but on the whole, you look at statistically, that's what you're looking at. So what you've got to remember is that a lot of these people in Japan, when Japan is the land of the samurai, it is not the land of the samurai. It's the land ruled by samurai. It is the land of the farmer. In all medieval society, farmers are the stock of people. Most people are farmers. The samurai rule them. So only about 6% of people are actually samurai. Now the samurai ended in 1868, but of course the spirit of the samurai lived on, but it only lived on in 6% of the population, not the other 94. Only 6% of it lived on, who actually, by that I mean grew up as samurai. If you grow up as a farmer, you're a farmer. If you grow up as a craftsman, you're a craftsman. If you grow up as a samurai, you're a samurai. Remember, them informative years are what shape and mold you. So just because something is traditionally Japanese doesn't make it traditionally samurai. Remember that. The samurai have a different mindset to the farmer. That's the point of having the social hierarchy and educating people in a different way. The other element we have to remember is that the samurai actually started to decline in the 1600s. In the 1600s, it was obvious, like Musashi is saying, it's just declining here. We know Natori is like, oh my God, things are just not being kept. Fujibayashi's writing the Shinobu, it's like, we can't even keep this stuff going. And then we know by the time it comes to the Boshin War and it comes to sort of the end of the Edo period and it comes to like the problems in Kyoto, they end up having to hire sort of like non-samurai to do some fighting. Of course, there are rock hard samurai. There's some really hard samurai at the end of the Edo period. But on the whole, the samurai have become bureaucrats. They have not become warriors, if you want. They're just like, when it came to battle, it was clearly shown that a lot of them didn't have the skills that they thought they had because they lived on family name alone. They didn't actually have to test themselves. And not being tested in 250 years leads to basically a lot of fat bureaucrats sat around being samurai, but they weren't actually samurai, most of them, the majority of them. So think about it this way, by the end of the Edo period, that's the 1860s, you've got only 6% of the population as samurai. Only a tiny fraction of them can actually fight, and they have to hire in people to fight for the samurai because it's just, guys, come on, the samurai epoch ended there because they just become absolutely useless. You got the rise of the merchant class. This means that the merchants became absolutely powerful. Merchant guilds were really powerful. They were really rich. The samurai became really poor. There's no more land to grab. There's too many descendants. There's a lack of ability within the samurai class. There's uprisings, and in the end they just get swiped away. Get rid of that. Nobody wanted them at the end, apart from the samurai themselves. They wanted 6%. Then you have to remember, after this period, you got massive Westernization. So not only have you only got 6% who are samurai, who have then given up their samurai status, they've been forced to give it up, they then adopt Western ideas. So this samurai class is tiny now, tiny thin line, like oil floating on the top of the water. It's so thin. Now, on top of that, loads of them become Western. Samurai families take on businesses, they become powerful in that way. And then you get families who take on medical, modern medicine, modern engineering. They actually start to throw away the old ways as useless. The emperor cuts off his top knot in a show of a sort of like massive show of like, we're moving on to West. He's got short hair. That was a big step, guys, don't forget that. And then the West is amazing. They even throw away the katana. The katanas are not used. They use Western sabers. Now, of course, they replace the Western saber again with katana because they realize the katana had a better cutting power in warfare. But at the end of the day, they just basically replaced all of samurai warfare. They just got samurai warfare and did this. The bin. And the only people who continued samurai warfare were not the military, were the sort of the Koryu, the people who had done it from the Edo period. It was seen as an outdated, old, useless thing, a curiosity of history. They were so moving forward with Westernization that almost in the imperial section drove out. We know that in World War I and World War II, the Japanese fought a Western war. They fought Western style with Western tactics. All these old manuals went in the back burner. Divination for times, and they just got rid of it and they brought in. Of course, the last samurai I know is like totally incorrect, but at the end of the day, the truth here is they did bring in Western military people to help them fight, and there's so many accounts of Western people fighting even after the Edo period finished. They're carrying on fighting, way into a further line. So consider this. So the people became equal to samurai. Samurai now was so trodden down that the people who they used to lord it above were equal to them. And the emperor came back in power. Now it's a big idea. The shogun is gone, the emperor is in power, and everybody gets a blanket. You are the children of the emperor. You are all the emperor's children. You are equal under the eyes of the emperor, the god emperor of Japan. At this point, people adopted second names. When the samurai ended, they adopted second names. So when people try to trace their family lineage, they may have a samurai name, but technically they're not from a samurai background. It means they just adopted these names because the commoners weren't allowed surnames. So what you've got to remember is these people are like, they've got very samurai sounding names, or you've got a name, you think, oh, I've heard that in the samurai archives. They may never have even been that. So remember, 6% are samurai, the other 94% pick a name. And there's only so many names to go around. So most of the people who claim samurai lineage are probably from family lineage anyway. They just don't know it. Their name is from samurai times. Now, in the early 20th century, they actually suppressed Buddhism, and they really gave and they forced state Shinto. So right now, the mind of everyone born in a certain generation, the pre-Manchurian invasions, they're absolutely state Shinto. We are imperialistic. We serve the god. Now, it's important that it's Shinto because the emperor is he's a descendant of the god. The god who created Japan and all this, and the gods who were in Japan. The emperor is... he's given his power from them, and he claims power because he's related to them. So what does this mean? It means that the Buddhist sort of element and the samurai element are absolutely suppressed, and they rise up the idea that you're all equal under the emperor, and the emperor is a god, and that you should follow him to death. And thus we get World War II, and we get all this, kamikaze stuff, and you've got this absolutely crushed down the old. And what they do then is they manipulate the samurai spirit. What they actually do is use propaganda in World War II. They've got the samurai, and they've got, everybody have a katana, officers have katana, you are bushi, you are from the world of samurai. No, they're not. By this point, the social sort of landscape has changed so much that they're not actually anything like samurai anymore. And this is well known, sort of in history, is that they really the Japanese used the samurai image in propaganda to inspire commoners, basically foot soldiers are commoners, and because at this time the samurai families, like the 4%, the 6%, still knew they were from samurai lineage. Of course, their social attitudes are changing, but they're as close you're going to get to a real samurai in World War II. Now, they were the aristocrats. They got barons and counts and earls, and the equivalents in Japan. You still had them at this point, and they were from the samurai. And these are only samurai families that can trace themselves to royal lineage. So it gets really complicated. Those who have connections to royal houses become what's the word I'm looking for, aristocratic. Then there's samurai houses who are non-aristocratic, because there's even division among the samurai, and that's only 6%. And then below them you've got all the foot soldiers who now are taking on samurai names, or they've taken on general surnames, and then they're told you're from the samurai class, you're a samurai, here's a katana, go and die. And it's right now, so hopefully you're still with me and you're following this, is their mindset is nothing like the Edo period. They've totally changed. That social landscape has been totally changed. Like thousands of years have passed by, the mountains have changed, the areas changed. Everything's different for them. Of course, it has an echo. The language is the same. The dress is similar to how it used to be. They can all read the writing. Some of their ancestors or the oldest people may remember their grandfathers were once samurai, but at the end of the day, things have changed. The end of World War II, Japan is defeated, shamed, blah, blah, blah. We all know it. They lose this idea that everything, and I've talked to some Japanese people here who remember, like, for example, like the Yoshi and all these people, their mothers, they said before the war, everything was very Japanese. After the war, they sort of left everything old behind. They literally cut it off. Now, martial arts were banned at this point, and actually the traditions went underground. So it's debatable how many of them actually continued, or how many of them were revamped after the ban. I don't know. That's another scholar needs to get on that. So, for example, those whose lineages exist today, they've got to account for what happened in the years of them being banned. Were they still active or not? These are all questions, but the point is it's banned and it's seen as bad, and it pretty much destroys the lineages and everything going back beyond there, and only a few of them, that's why we only have a few left today, is that most of them were banned, shut down. People thought they were useless. It was like, we lost World War II, we've been, everything's changed, we're very Western now, we don't need that old rubbish. And they get put in libraries, and they get put in, all the scrolls get put in different sections that go around, the second-hand market. You could throw them away at one point. People even said they used to be just burnt or thrown away. So in 1947 you get a constitution change. Now this totally changes everything. The Japanese people get a constitution. Now this gives them all rights. This is like breaking away the last of those samurai vestiges. It's totally gone now. They've got a new way of thinking is given, a total new way of thinking. And on top of that, the aristocracy is collapsed now. The only aristocrats left in Japan at this point are the emperors. So nobody even claims aristocratic anymore apart from the direct emperor and his descendants. So everything has changed. So then in the 20th century, there's a revamp. Let's do samurai things, like later 20th century, in like the 70s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. You get this revamp, they build the Budokan, they start, these festivals of martial arts, these keeping traditions, because they realize the traditions are sort of going, but at this point they're gone. Now, the question I'm going to ask you is, these people who took up the torch and carried these traditions on, which are great people, we owe them a lot for even keeping these traditions alive. Nobody's saying they're bad people. It's great they did this, but they are not samurai. Remember that, they are not samurai. They were born in an era that has nothing to do with samurai. They have a different social mindset. They are probably not from a samurai descendant, and they are tainted with movies, ideas, propaganda about what a samurai should be. Therefore, they take on this, I'm not going to use the word fake because that's wrong, but they take on this sort of imagined idea of what the samurai are. What would samurai be like? Oh, stoic, and he doesn't touch money, and they adopt a samurai posture when they have no connection to samurai whatsoever. So what does this mean? It means that while a teacher of Koryu may be a really nice person, he may be an intelligent person, he may be a physically superb martial artist, at the end of the day, most of the schools now are run as businesses. That is without a doubt a fact. These schools run, you pay your yearly membership, you pay your monthly fee, and you go in and they sell you some skills, and it's probably sold by a merchant. So we've got to remember this, when I say merchant, that's not a negative thing, it's literally they are a merchant. If you've got to remember that these people, the grandmasters, probably have a day job. So what's their day job? They own a restaurant, or maybe they're a bank clerk, or maybe they're an office worker, and at weekends they do it. Now, a few of them have actually become professional grandmasters. By that I mean their school's done well enough that they earn enough money to survive. Now this is absolutely, you've got to see that's a merchant running a samurai school, alright? That's not a bad thing, they may be nice people, but at the end of the day, it's not a samurai. It's a merchant running a business based on samurai ideas. So to round up this section, I know it's been a long section, but it's really crucial that you understand the changes that go through from the 1600s to 2014, which is right now, the changes in samurai. For samurai up here, they jut down, cry. Then it leaps to another social class. So it's totally crazy in the sense of thinking that the teacher represents what a samurai looks like. So one of the mistakes I always made was like, you see the stoic teacher in Japan, and he's like, there's a dynamic picture of them, and you're like, they are really close to samurai. They are not. They are not. So here's what you've got to do when you're thinking about actually looking at a grandmaster. You think they may be really, really nice people. Nobody's taking that away from them. They are actually carrying on a tradition, which is a great thing, yeah? But they're doing it from a financial standpoint. That's not a bad negative thing. That means literally they've got to make money to live. If they're not, they're already working as a job. That means they are not from samurai stock. You know what I mean? They've got a job. The idea is they're not paid by land, and that's their family arts. So what I'm trying to say is that while these people may be great at MA, they may be great, know their traditions very well, they may even be very, very educated, they are not samurai, they are modern people. And they are modern people with modern social values. And they feel pressure to put on a samurai air. Now this samurai air is not actually what a samurai would be like. It may represent it slightly, it may be similar, it might be an echo, but it is not samurai. Don't think that there is a link between actual samurai and a modern grandmaster in the sense of how they think. There's only a Japanese link. Samurai were Japanese, modern Japanese are Japanese. That's the only link, unless you find a school which is absolutely from a samurai family and they've passed it on. Of course, the social attitude has still changed, but at the end of the day, that's the only time you'll find a samurai. Let me ask you this question. If a samurai was brought from the 1500s and brought to the future, and they got shown into a modern dojo, and they said, oh yeah, he's not a samurai, he's a merchant, and he's from a, he's a craftsman, his job is to make pots, or he works in a factory. Samurai would be like, a craftsman? An artisan? Or worse, the merchant. If he said he works in a bank, the samurai go, what? You've got a bank worker as the head of this school? Swords would flash out and heads would roll. Absolutely, there's no way they would go for it. The samurai couldn't stand the other lot, right? So what you've got to remember when you look at these people is that sometimes they're not great at martial arts. They've probably never had a fight in their life. They may be horrible people. They may be money grabbing. But they put on the airs of a samurai and people give them respect because of this idea you come from the West. So remember, no matter if they are amazing people or horrible people, they are not samurai. They are a representation of what we think samurai would be like. I hope you're still with me, guys, and I hope you've enjoyed it so far. So what I'm going to do is round up for you now what you should do. Now, these were mistakes I made. I made these mistakes, and I thought my goal is to absolutely change the way Western people think about the samurai. That is my goal. I want you, at the end of this video, you there watching YouTube, to think, oh, okay, so, right, how do I change my attitude towards samurai? So here's how to answer the 5 things. First off, remember that what you're being taught is probably samurai dueling. Some of it may be for the battlefield, but most of it, let's say most of it, is actually for dueling with samurai. Please remember that. Don't go away saying, this is how samurai fought on the battlefield. It's not. More than likely, it's not. It's man-on-man combat. Please remember that. Kata is symbolic. It is an abstract form of what people believed fighting to be. Those people probably never had a fight in their life who've passed it on for so long, and this means that it becomes stale, it becomes stagnant. So your job when you go to the dojo is to find the essence inside. What is the essence? Normally when people sort of like walk forward their sword, they do all the bowing and then they do the posture, and then there's that slight little fast movement inside it. There's the essence in the kata. Take that out and use that and build your martial arts ability from that essence. Your loyalty is to your family. So if you're a man and you're training, let's say, and you've got children and you've got a wife and you've got, extended family and a house, the reason you're learning these things is to protect those people. If you want to go down the samurai line, to protect those. If you have people you consider above you that you follow, you would protect them as well, or follow their wills. If you say, you're part of a political party, or you're part of, I don't know, some sort of like Greenpeace thing, is you learn these things so you can defend yourself, you can understand, more, you can become more intelligent, you can understand the world around you, and it's there to serve you in your purpose of who you give allegiance to. It's never there to serve the school. So don't think, we serve the school. It's great to feel bonded with people in the same dojo, that's absolutely, and some of the schools may have goals which you may agree with, but at the end of the day, you shouldn't agree with a school's goals, you shouldn't do the goals or follow the goals of the school if you actually personally don't agree with them. That was never the samurai way. The samurai way was to follow their house. So follow what's best for you and your family, not the school. Careful of the Mac dojo. Now be careful here, because at the end of the day we all need to make money. We live in a consumer 20th century where we can't go land grabbing anymore by murdering people, agreed. So we all need cash, and it's okay to make cash from martial arts, it's okay to make cash from the samurai, not a problem. But when you walk into that dojo, are you getting what you're paying for? Is it become a money making scheme? Are they just trying to rinse you for cash and tell you, you're learning the ways of the samurai? Even in Japan this happens, yeah guys, even in Japan this happens. So you remember, it's your money and your well-earned cash that you've got. Make sure you give it to the right people. Give them the cash, it's not a problem. Let them make money out of it. They're the ones who hold the tradition, especially the Japanese. Give the Japanese the money, but make sure you get your money's worth, and make sure you're not getting sold a load of crap for your money. Just remember that. Cash is alright, but it never used to be based on that in the slightest. Remember, the Grandmaster is not a samurai. The modern Japanese people are Japanese. They are not samurai. There is only the thinnest line. So when you look at the teacher, just think he's Japanese. He has a great language ability. He may be intelligent. He may be great. To be honest, I'm overstating this, but you shouldn't be sort of training under someone who you don't like. You never do that. If they're clearly bad people, don't train there. And if they're clearly useless at fighting, don't train there. So the idea is that when you go to a dojo, you should remember that they are trying to pass on the traditions of the samurai, but they're not samurai themselves. Remember this. Right guys, that's it. I've come to the end of the video. Now my name's Anthony Cummins and I'm really trying to find my way through all the mistakes, and we're trying to research and make sure everybody's got the correct idea of the samurai. So what I want to say is this, is if you've been offended by this video, I apologise, there's no offence, given. But what you've got to remember is that you've got to find somebody who can fight really well. You've got to find someone who knows what they're talking about, and you've got to find someone you can trust. There's an amazing world out there of samurai to understand and to study, but you've got to make sure you don't just study one school and get all your information there and the rest are wrong and this is our school, we have a lineage, isn't it great? Don't do that. Samurai didn't do that, you shouldn't do it. Study at multiple schools. As long as these subjects don't cross over, study at multiple schools. You should learn about the way a samurai thinks, study some Buddhism, study some Shinto, understand about feudal society, just take a bit of a look into feudal systems and warrior cultures and headhunter cultures. Then take a deeper look into Japan and understand what happened in Japan, or at least how things used to work. Now there you should get a much more rounded understanding of the samurai. And of course subscribe here and I'll keep you up to date with videos like this, and it should, if you keep up to date with me, you should get a better understanding of the samurai all around. But remember, there are bad people out there who will teach you a load of crap and steal your money. There are great people out there who will teach you some great stuff for a reasonable amount. But above all, the history of the samurai is out there, and I'm going to find it, guys, and I'm going to bring it to you. So keep with me and keep going, and let's keep pushing till we get down to that truth. I've got a new book coming out called Samurai and Ninja, and I'm going to put a picture of it here. If you want to know more about the world of the samurai, get that now. It's available to order and it'll be out very soon.